So this is a cool way to use a heavy bag to work on a precision of like movement, like where you need to try for like to participate. So with a punch, you're looking at like, okay, how much force, how much impact am I putting into the bag? And so that's the only point that's happening is right there. So if I'm gonna try and include other things, like if I'm gonna try and use my muscles, if I'm gonna try and use my momentum, I can't use my momentum here. I have to use my momentum, I have to funnel it in only right there. Right at that impulse, like right at that moment. It's like it's genuinely a hit is like a moment. And so in that moment is the only time that I have to, like, if I'm gonna like get my shoulders or my hips or anything, the ground, anything involved, all of that, the only time that effort goes is right there. If I try beforehand or afterhand, I might try and I'm like throwing my arm faster and maybe the arm will hit, but it really has nothing to do with my hit in that moment. It's like something that I arranged beforehand, right? But if I'm trying to like, I only have this snapshot to put any pizzazz on it. And so if you realize like where you have to be to have choice, I think people have described this as like maybe clinching at the last moment. It's not clinching or anything. It's just knowing that you only have right there. You only have right there to impact, and there's nothing else you're going to do before or after that that's going to help that moment. And and then how can you get in and out of that moment as fast as possible, and then to realize that the only way that somebody can be hit, the only way that you can hit is to have that moment, right? So like if somebody's hitting you, all you have to do is to slow it down or absorb it or eat it or change it or move just enough so that the moment is just a little bit longer. If it's drawn outside of the moment of impact, then it's just a shove. And it doesn't matter. Like if the force doesn't transmit upon impact, then you've impacted and shoved, and it's not one thing hitting another thing. It just behaves as a single system, which is like a shove. So there's this moment of impact, and it's only at that impact that, like, if I want to practice putting my hips or the ground into it, like I only have that impact to get my hips into it, or my arm. This is related to that other video where it's talking about the whole body helping everything else. Like there's an impact, so it's like, can any part of the body help that impact? I can put my foot into the impact, and you'll find that causes different techniques to come out. Like to get my foot to actually hit, it slides forward a little bit, or like just, you know, hip, like right at the impact is when all the energy of that area, if it wants to participate, has to discharge. It has to wait until impact, and it has to discharge right on impact, or it happens beforehand, or it turns into a shove. And so you kind of have to be like, there has to be some body mechanics involved, but it doesn't matter that much. So you start to have less telegraphed or again, working on the ground, right at impact, I want to shove the ground into the bag. and I can only do it right at impact. So I throw stuff in such a way that I can continue to feel throughout the throw, and then the instant impact happens. I need to be not preoccupied so much that I can discharge still. Like if somebody knows this stuff, if you can just scare them or discombobulate them or distract them, the timing has to be off just a little bit, and all of a sudden they can't make any impacts. It's the same as like if somebody throws something at you, if you're off by just a little bit, it doesn't hit you. So the same thing when you're doing conscious punching or whatever, then if you're off by just a little bit, there's zero impact. And that's why people say to avoid different positions, or where they think that different movement patterns hit harder, is just because those patterns don't preoccupy the person, they don't break their rhythm. So if the rhythm's not broken, if the person's not preoccupied, then at the moment of impact, their somatic or physical intelligence isn't distracted, so it can still calculate or feel or perform a hit. And that's the powerful hit. If you're just throwing, you can't, like if you're throwing your punch and not staying with it and not hitting at the end, then you're just throwing a punch, and it's like hitting somebody with your arm, and it's like, okay, sweet, whatever. Like, yeah, it probably wears them down over time, and there's probably entire fights fought between people just throwing their arms at each other versus like at that moment of impact, there's still being choice. You're not like distracted and just swinging wild. It's like you do, and then great, and then those hit harder. And then against somebody who's not good at this at all, you're totally unstoppable. If you get two people that are roughly at the same thing, it obviously one of you is going to distract the other one. You're going to look embarrassed. Like getting the legs into the hit is pretty fun, in my opinion. And it's the actual legs pushing on the ether. It's not like, oh, the legs pull the hips in the ground. It's like separating it's a little bit weird. Just like kicking with a kickboard is it's a weird swimming technique to kick with a board, but it's helpful. And it's the same thing with punching, of like to break apart punching technique like this is like doing one arm drills swimming or doing kick only. It's like, it's functionally absurd, but the limitation lets you maybe study something that you would otherwise be too distracted to notice. And there's a million what you can do with your legs. I can hit with my impacting with like the head is pretty cool. It's like a wrecking ball almost, right? So like a good punch here is like, I just want to be able to, like when I get here, I want to be able to throw my head into it for this drill. So whatever gets me to here pretty relaxed, so that when I'm right here, I can just like, oh yeah, I got time to hit. I just want to be not preoccupied until it's time to hit. And I just want to be in a position or a situation to where I can like discharge everything. So then everything leading up to that is just supposed to be like, the correct technique is to get into hitting position without being preoccupied by either your movements or theirs. You can hit with the ribs, I guess, right? And each one's pretty crazy. Like when you're hitting with the head, it's like literally like a wrecking ball of momentum. And then with the ribs, it's like this omnidirectional power generation thing, like moving with 1,000 legs or however many ribs you have. And then the hips is like a bladed axe rudder keel. It's like swinging an axe or a maul, but also like being able to crank the keel on a boat and just like boom. And it's doing all three at once is incomprehensible. I wouldn't be doing any of those. I don't even know what to call all of that together, right? I could break it apart for a drill. And even try and include it together as a drill, which is, even if I get that, it's kind of broken because it already was.